Like, share and subscribe for more great content. Help get this video 100 likes if you would like us to release more parts in this series. This fanspiration was written by Tony0423. Remember to support the writers on social media. And now let's begin. Following the events of the Season 2 finale, Miguel wakes up at the beginning of the summer. With the knowledge of the future, Miguel attempts to right his wrongs. Time travel, Dream O. Season 2 spoilers within. Tori, enough. I shout out, trying to get the girls from fighting. To my utter astonishment, Tori pushes me out of the way and kicks me to the ground. We lock eyes for a moment and I can see the pain plastered on her face. It was then that her words ran through my head. The world shows no mercy, so why should we? Some people have it good, but the rest of us have to fight for every inch of what's ours. Not just to score a point. For everything. She was fighting for every inch, and I had taken advantage of that. If only I'd gotten to talk with her before this all happened. Sam. I was snapped back to reality at the voice of Robbie Keane. He'd gotten away from the others and was bounding up the stairs. I can't let him get in the way again. As he was coming up to the landing, I swept my foot towards him, knocking him down. I have to keep him away from Tori. I rush him as the girls bring their fight to a lower landing, better to get him out of the equation so that I can deal with the girls. I send 2 kicks to his legs and midsection, trying to get him off balance before I lean back to avoid a kick aimed at my head. He throws 2 punches at me, neither getting to their intended target. What does Akorba do? Slither. I weave through his defense and send a roundhouse to his stomach again. He catches it and sends an elbow into my leg and then my face. Shit. As I'm backing up and thinking of ways to finish this, he speaks up again. That's for taking advantage of Sam. Who does this prick? I would never. Then why did it happen? To think he'd even suggest such a thing. Before I know it, we're exchanging blows again. I hear Sam scream in the background. I manage to knock him to the ground and knee him in his ribs twice. He's not getting away this time. I get up and kick Robbie over to the railing. He starts to get up but lays back down and dodges the kick I aimed at his head. As he's getting back up, I can't help but mock him. She doesn't love you, she loves me. This sets Robbie off, making him swing his leg at my own. He manages to get me with his second kick, but I grab a hold of the third. He uses the railing to his advantage as he drives home another kick, sending me to the wall. I bounce back right into his fists as he starts to aim at my stomach and then my face. I blocked one of his punches by bringing my arm up, but that was quickly met with a kick to my left leg, bringing me down to my knee. I didn't have any time to think, Robbie was beyond livid. I leaned back to avoid a kick aimed at my ribs, Robbie continuing to follow me with a back fist barely missing my nose. Luckily this left him open for me to kick him away, allowing me some time and letting me get my bearings. He comes at me with a simple straight punch. Having sparred with Hawk so many times, it's basically become routine for what happens next. I knock him off balance by rotating with the punch and hook my arm under his extension, following quickly with my leg sweeping behind his own so I can throw him to the ground with a shoulder throw. Using this to my advantage, I flip him over and pull his arm towards me, holding it in place while also holding down his shoulder, increasing the pain and not allowing for him to get out of the grip. If I wanted to, I could easily break his arm or at least pop his shoulder out of its socket. Just as I was about to put Robbie out of the fight, a voice hits me. Sensei Lawrence's voice. I wasn't taught the difference between mercy and honor, and I paid the price for it. If I'm extra hard on you, it's only because you have the potential to be better than I ever was. You want that, don't you? I hear the yelling and screaming from the other kids who are watching the fight. I look to Robbie, who's squirming under my grip. The difference between mercy and honor. I let go of Robbie's arm. Taking a breath, I swallow before I say my next 2 words. I'm sorry. Next thing I know, Robbie elbows me on the side of my head, hooks my leg in his as he's getting up from the floor, and with a powerful kick to my stomach, I'm looking up at the ceiling. I notice the railing slowly getting further and further away, my arms reaching for something to stop me. The last thing I hear is a scream. Miguel. I woke up with start. I looked around my room quickly as I sat up, touching my face to feel for any bruises or pain. I checked my phone to see what time it was but almost dropped it in shock. May 20th. The day after the tournament. Throwing off the covers, Miguel quickly threw on the closest clothes that he could and practically raced out the door. He passed by his grandmother, who was at the stove making breakfast. He was out the door before she could say anything. "Allo menos puedes saludarme. At least you could have said hello to me," she said to the empty room, looking at the door that Miguel had left open. Quickly crossing the courtyard, Miguel raised his hand to knock on Sensei Lawrence's door before stopping. How the hell am I supposed to explain all this without sounding batshit crazy? Miggy thought to himself before he knocked on the door anyway. Best to just be blunt about it. Winging it was kinda his thing anyway. When Miggy didn't get a response, he knocked again, and a third time before texting his sensei. It was 8:15 a.m. "Yaya wanted to know if you'd like to come over for breakfast. I tried your door but you weren't answering and I can't find my keys." He typed out, adding in little white lies so as to not seem suspicious. "No dice, kid. Already 8. Miguel looked at his phone as the message came back a few minutes later. Sighing in defeat, he tried to remember how the day had gone by last time around but found himself busy doing chores all day with his yaya. Leave it to Hispanics to use their weekends doing chores. School this time around had gone almost to the letter compared to last time. This made it easy for Miguel to think both about how each day was to progress and about the imminent future. Having girl trouble wasn't exactly something he could say he had as of this moment, but he knew that come a few days down the line, Tori would kick her way back into his life. And with her came Sensei Kreese. Miguel had thought about the best course of action to ensure that the man who had corrupted the new Cobra Kai be taken out at the soonest possible opportunity. Deciding to let nature take its course, for now, Miguel was on his way to the dojo with Hawk, noting how different Hawk was compared to the person he had become by the start of the next school year. "Alright. So I get my license next week. My mum's gonna give me her Sentra. I'm thinking about putting a blue racing stripe down the middle, hood to tail," Hawk told Miggy, all the while making motions with his hands. This time around Miguel made sure to secure his scooter so as to not forget about it and have it stolen again, Hawk following suit. "Subtle, I like it," Miguel said, latching the lock onto the cord. They then started walking towards the entrance, seeing a bunch of kids crowded around, seemingly wanting to go in but waiting for something. "Looks like we got some new students." "Fresh fish," Hawk commented with a sinister grin. "Check this out." Miguel placed his hand on Eli's shoulder before looking him straight in the eye. Knowing that half the kids present would eventually turn to Miyagi-Do, Miguel wanted to cool the rising temperatures before the flame was even lit. "Don't." Hawk got the message, judging correctly how serious Miguel was and toned down his arrogance just enough to not seem like a complete dick. "Hey, mouth breathers, out of the way." To be fair, Hawk did hold back this time. Chris and Mitch, getting the door just like last time. To his credit, however, Hawk didn't cause the rookies to flinch this time, simply stating how they had a long road ahead. "What the hell happened here?" Hawk questioned while looking at the damages to the dojo. Miguel kept quiet, knowing just what had transpired. Aisha was stretching a bit when the two had come in and answered the question. "Looks like Sensei threw a party. Must have been one hell of a party though. Especially if fire got involved." Hawk agreed, starting towards the locker room after Miguel. The two quickly changed into their GI, knowing the lesson would start soon. When they exited the locker room, Sensei was already done kicking the newcomers out, calling for everyone to fall in. "Must have been a rager, Sensei," Hawk said proudly. Again Miguel stayed silent. He knew whether or not he added in his own words foolishly like last time, the punishment would be the same. "Yeah, I was raging. Raging at the fact that my students are a bunch of pussies." He looked between the two before calling them out to the front. Much like last time, Miguel and Hawk were asked the same questions, and much like last time, Johnny asked Aisha which Cobra she would rather be. At the end of it all, Johnny made Hawk and Miguel do 50 push-ups on their knuckles. This was the moment Miguel was waiting for. He knew he had to play it cool, recite the words he had used last time, and then get to the point where he would drop the bomb on his sensei. Why take pity on Robbie Keane? Miguel knew why. Robbie was Johnny's son. While Miguel would be happy to pummel the bastard into a bloody pulp, he also had too much respect for his sensei to cause the man he regarded as his father figure that sort of grief. "Look." Johnny had gotten out of his seat and walked around to stand in front of Miguel. "I wasn't taught the difference between mercy and honor, and I paid the price for it. If I'm extra hard on you, it's only because you have the potential to be better than I ever was. You want that, don't you?" A ghost of a smile reached Miguel's face before he bowed his head a bit. "Yes, sensei." "All right." Johnny's face then gave his signature little smirk. He cocked his head towards the main room in the dojo, then stop whining like a little bitch and go out there and finish your drills. This made Miguel smirk in a similar manner before he turned to close the door. "Actually, sensei, there's something else I want to talk about." Sensing the seriousness in Miguel's tone, Johnny made his way back towards his chair, stopping to grab a banquet on the way. "What, did you bang a hot chick after winning and get her pregnant?" Johnny cracked a smile, Miguel sitting down on a spare chair. "What? No. Sensei, this is serious. I've been through this before. I had a crazy dream where this entire summer had gone by. Your sensei had come back to help run the dojo, your friend Tommy died, I started dating this new girl in the dojo named Tori, she and Sam went at it, you and La Russo became friends again, Hawk and Moon broke up, Moon throws this huge party, the cops show up, we went to Coyote Creek, Sam got drunk and kissed me at the party, we got back to school and Tori called out Sam over the loudspeaker and this whole rumble happened, I think I died. I. Whoa, Diaz, slow down there. Johnny cut the kid off before he could hurt himself. Miguel looked up from his trembling hands to stare into Johnny's eyes, and at that moment Johnny knew Miguel wasn't playing around. After a few tense moments, Johnny replayed what Miguel had just told him. He hadn't told anyone about Chris, he hadn't spoken to Tommy or any of the guys since he started running the dojo full-time, and he'd never mentioned Coyote Creek to any of his students, knowing just how horrible the exercise could get and how quickly it could escalate without proper discipline. To say Miguel had Johnny's attention would be an understatement. A knock was heard on the office door a short time later. Sensei? We've finished our drills. We even did a few more since it looked like you and Miguel were having a serious conversation. Aisha stood behind the door, waiting for any sign of life from the other side. Thank you, Miss Robinson. We'll be out shortly. Johnny's voice came from inside the office. He looked at Miguel for a few more minutes before he began to get up. Miguel got up with him, starting for the door. Johnny placed a hand on Miggy's shoulder, gaze leveling with his student. Not a word about this to anyone else. Do you understand, Mr. Diaz? A silent nod came from Miguel before the two exited the office. Turns out this would indeed be a cruel summer, but not as cruel as the one Miguel had just described. Johnny had a lot to think about. From what he'd heard from Miguel, allowing Chris to take over for the month had been a bad idea. Simply allowing Chris back into the dojo had been the worst mistake he could have imagined. Sure, the old dog could have taught the kids a thing or two, maybe even having two sensei run the dojo would better benefit the kids. These were the only reasons Johnny had been even considering letting the bastard into his dojo. But after hearing the full story from Miguel, there couldn't be a worse choice. Miguel had gone on and on about how Chris had slowly woven his grubby hands into the minds of the students, declared war between Cobra Kai and Larisso's stupid free dojo that would be opening in a few weeks, no doubt taking students with him, even going as far as making Johnny himself become the sensei he never wanted to be. Harsher, more demanding, and an overall jackass. Or at least that was at the beginning of the summer. Miguel has reassured him that after the students had become accustomed to the new teachings, and Chris had become less demanding, the workload hadn't gotten much harder, only less forgiving. You never change though, sensei. Miguel would say with a smile on his face, a faraway look in his eyes. You would always want what was best for us. For me. Hawk was a bit more influenced by Chris. He turned into what you never wanted us to be. Johnny didn't like the steel in Miguel's eyes when he said that. There was the makings of a petty revenge story that would span the rest of his life, or at least 30 years before flaring up again when Miguel was a loser nobody who opened up his own dojo and Hawk was a stupid car salesman with a stupid auto company, and had a stupid shitty commercial that played every 5 minutes whenever Miguel was trying to peacefully watch some damn TV, only to have Miguel's son be taken under Hawk's wing, probably literally, and be trained in karate even after the kid had been offered countless times when he was younger and… Fuck, Johnny needed a banquet. Miguel sat in his last class for the year. Sure, he could have skipped class, but he didn't know what consequences that might have on anything that happened during the summer. Or would happen in this case. As he sat there, Miggy was roughing out the edges on a workout plan that he would run by sensei. He needed to stay on top of both the class and of his own. While Miguel may not have agreed with Chris's teachings, he couldn't deny the boost in physical strength his body had taken. Thoughts of John Kreese soon turned to thoughts of Tori. Their first meeting would be soon, and Miguel would be lying if he said he wasn't looking forward to seeing his girlfriend again. Which brought him to his current situation. Despite what you may believe, Miggy still hadn't made up his mind about the whole girl trouble situation. While, yes, he had made time to think about that, he still wasn't sure whether or not he should go back to Samantha. And as he approached meeting Tori, his deadline on an easier choice was coming to a close. Once Tori was back in his life, it'd be hell once more. A light shoulder shove snapped Miguel back to reality. Demetri stood over his friend with an impatient look in his eyes. Well? Aren't we going to go find the gang and plan out our summer? I was planning on going to Comic-Con with Eli, but Hawk doesn't like nerd shit, apparently. Demetri rolled his eyes, a scoff following soon after. This whole Hawk thing has been getting to his head. It's honestly concerning, and it's starting to get annoying. Oh, but excuse me, mention this to Hawk and expect some sort of insult or a fist to the face. Miguel found it amusing just how right Demetri was. The emphasis and mocking whenever Mitri used Hawk, bringing an even bigger smile to Miggy's face. While the two had been close at the start of their friendship, seeing as how all three were losers, Demetri hadn't been around too much this summer. Placing an arm around his buddy's shoulders, Miguel steered Mitri out of the classroom and towards their lockers. "Don't you worry, my friend. We'll come up with something. Maybe even hang at the beach. Get a few smokin' hot babes." A nudge to the sides and a few emphasized winks finally broke Dimitri's stern face, a little smile forming on the nerd's face. "Smoking hot babes? Well, count me in. You know they say trouble in the valley doesn't start until a newcomer enters. You wouldn't suppose this would be such a case?" a teen asked, leaning back in his chair. He spoke to an empty room, staring at an hourglass, watching as each individual grain of sand fell towards the bottom. A crack smaller than an eyelash could be seen right in the cross-section between the two hemispheres, causing a frown to form on the teen's face. Strange. Seems there was a defect in the process. Would it be too much of a strain to send someone in to fix it? Tori couldn't stop thinking about him. Miguel Diaz. Winner of the All-Valley Under-18 tournament. The way he moved in the ring. The way his eyes lit up with a cold-hearted fire. Leader of the Quiver of Cobra. King Cobra of Cobra Kai. When her friend had dragged her in to watch the dumb tournament, Tori hadn't cared much about karate. She simply saw it as people trained it, a watered-down sport that was more about scoring points and less about actually learning to fight. Having grown up on the streets, fending for herself and her little brother, Tori saw little value in learning useless forms and kata that you'd never use exactly as taught. But when she saw the ruthlessness that Cobra Kai had brought to the stage, Tori knew she just had to try this place out. She watched as the Cobras took on their opponents as if their life depended on it. She looked on in awe as even the smallest of the bunch, a scrawny kid with sticks for arms and huge glasses on his face, fought to earn his spot in the top 16, beating out even tougher and more experienced kids, all because he didn't treat this match as a spar. All because they underestimated him. To say Tori was impressed would be an understatement. But then she laid her eyes on him. He who stood the tallest out of his group. Chin bent slightly upward, a cold calculating look in his eyes while the rest of his body was relaxed. The looks of approval and pride he wore when his teammates scored, and the way he would cheer for them even when they were at a giant disadvantage. Tori was in too deep before she even had a chance to realize what she was getting into. Eyes trailing after the top Cobra throughout the rest of the tournament, Tori was among those who cheered the loudest when Miguel beat that Reed kid 3-1. All the flips and fancy acrobatics weren't much help against a solid defense and a merciless lethal offense. But every time Miguel won, he would always look to a certain section of the bleachers. At first, Tori thought he was looking for his mum or a family member who had come to watch, but the look he would send in that direction somewhat diminished that thought process. That look was the look her mum used to wear at all those places she used to work at. The look that she would see on her brother's face from time to time. Miguel was searching for approval. Quickly excusing herself, Tori walked along the gym's borders trying to see just who Miguel was constantly looking at. She saw multiple girls, most of them either smiling or having a good time. There were a few with an annoyed expression, probably heated over the loss of the final Yoshikai student. But there was one girl who stood out among the bleachers. She sat right at the front, right next to that karate gimmick using car salesman who she would see on the TV, Daniel LaRusso. She wore the hardest glare as she stared at Miguel, rolling her eyes every time she saw him looking in her direction. It annoyed Tori. Who was this bitch and why was she so against Miguel winning? Something must have happened between those two, for sure. Tori was broken out of her anger-fueled trance when the gym burst into more cheers. Robbie Keane had also made it to the semi-finals. When the other two semi-finalists were decided, Tori frowned when she saw the final girl be eliminated. Aisha, or whatever her name was a good fighter. She brought the former champ to a 2-2 stalemate and only lost because Stone had swept her legs, using her weight against her. But there were still two Cobra left. Hawk and Miguel. Tori noted the girl from before had rushed after Aisha, maybe they were friends. It didn't really matter. Tori's attention was brought back to center stage when Xander Stone had taken the mic and started talking about fighting against hatred of whatever. Tori smiled broadly to herself as she remembered thinking to herself, God, I hope Miguel kicks this pansy bitch in the face. Social media is the end-all be-all of this generation. In a way, the whole reason the world functions today was because of the internet. Its importance is basically what fuels this earth. So you tell me how in the hell John Lawrence, a 51-year-old man, survived 20+ years on a burner phone and little to no connection to the internet whatsoever. I mean, Johnny knew what the internet was. Duh. He wasn't a complete idiot. But he wasn't exactly a nerd either. He wouldn't rely on it like a bunch of pansy bitches who only use it to read or be even nerdier. Just the thought of being a nerd caused a scowl to form on Sensei's face. He took a swig from his banquet, emptying the bottle, and threw it in the trash. Starting now, he'd be a better man. A healthier one. And then he flipped over the slices of bologna he had frying in his pan. He licked his lips just thinking of how good they would taste with a couple of slices of bread and some ketchup. Add a Slim Jim to the middle and you've got yourself a 5-star meal. Maybe being a better, healthier man could wait until tomorrow. Miguel, on the other hand, was deep in thought as he rode towards the dojo for the day. He had decided earlier on that he would try to reconcile with Sam this time around in order to, hopefully, have things go a bit easier than last time. Turning the final corner, Miguel was greeted with the sight of the usual regulars all standing around the entrance waiting for Johnny to arrive. Among the few was Aisha, who was talking to Bert. The little dude had a huge smirk on his face while Aisha looked like she would floor him right then and there. A smile grew on Miggy's face as he thought of how much the little dude had grown since starting at Cobra Kai. He could now go toe-to-toe with Aisha since he was a lot smaller and faster than most of the kids here, yet Bert couldn't land a single hit on either Hawk or Miguel. Quickly getting behind the larger of the two, Miguel snuck his hand into Aisha's bag, finding her phone. He slipped it into his pocket before interrupting the bout before Bert could counter. "You guys ready for today's lesson? I was talking with Sensei about it, we might be going over headbutting soon." Bert visibly perked up at that. A chance to learn something new, especially something as kick-ass as headbutting, was definitely up his alley. Aisha, on the other hand, just smirked at the little dweeb in front of her. She already knew who was the first person she'd practice on. Sounds like fun. You should really watch out for Hawk, though. He'll probably put a dent in both your skulls with how aggro he's been. Miguel could only laugh, personally knowing just how hard Eli could headbutt. It wasn't his favorite method to use, but whenever Miguel managed to cut off Hawk's arms and legs, there was always that one dagger in Hawk's arsenal. A faint pain pulsed in Miguel's nose at that moment. The memory of blood spilling everywhere still fresh in his mind. Hawk really got him good with that one. Once Johnny arrived, revving his engine as per usual, he unlocked the door and let the kids flood in. Today was the day he'd be getting new students, hopefully, and he wanted to make a good first impression. Suiting up in his fully black GI, he looked himself one more time in the mirror, checked for any stubble or hairs he might have missed, and proceeded to his desk to get all the papers the new recruits might need. Miguel, on the other hand, was busy gaining the courage to call a certain ex. He was planning out what to say and eventually just threw caution to the wind and pressed the call button. After a few rings, Sam answered in the same way she did last time. "Hey, about time I heard from you. Did you miss me?" She sounded so happy. "A lot. Please don't hang up. Aisha doesn't know I'm using her phone." Miguel managed to choke out. Why was this so hard? He'd done it before. Just like last time, however, Sam's voice went icy after hearing his own. "What do you want?" Taking a moment to compose himself, Miguel spoke out the words he thought were best. "Look, Sam. I know I made a mistake, a huge one, and I know things won't go back to the way they were before. Not without a lot of awkwardness and work and—" He took a deep breath to calm himself. "All I'm asking is that you give me a chance. Just a passing hi, or even a nod. Something. Something that we can use to rebuild a broken bridge. If I'm being honest, I can't stop thinking about you. About us. I just wanted to tell you I'm sorry, and for you to listen. Even if it was just for a couple of seconds." Sam had stayed silent on the other side. Miguel was beginning to think she had hung up, even checking if the call was still going before she sighed. "It's not that simple, Miguel. Look, I'll give it some thought. Maybe. But don't expect things to just click back to the way they were before. Just. Can you tell Aisha to call me back?" She hung up before Miguel could say anything. At least it was a start. Walking back to the changing room, Miguel had seen Hawk had come sometime during his talk with Sam, and now the three closest cobras to the King of the Quiver were deciding on the names of two newbies. "What do you think? Shithead 1 and Shithead 2? Eli asked, turning towards Alicia for confirmation, his chin being held in his hands as if actually thinking for once, something that seemed to have escaped Hawk later on in the summer. "So ya boy did what we call a pro big dumb move and forgot to save after completing this chapter. As a result, I've had to go back and rewrite everything I could remember, and because of that, the most likely thing is that the quality may or may not be worse than it was before. I am big dumb. My B. I was thinking more Mary Kate and ass hat." Aisha responded, making the three laugh. Miguel could see the uncomfortable shift in weight of the two newbies before the larger of the two took a tiny step forward. Were we really this bad? After winning a single All-Valley? "Well, I'm Cree, did I say you can speak?" Hawk cut him off, the two taking a step back in response. Having seen this for a second time, Miguel had seen enough and simply walked up to the two new students, patting the brave one on the arm. "Guys, look, they're just messing with you. Don't take it too personally. I'm Miguel, by the way." Miggy stuck his hand out to both boys and shook them, a smile on his face. He gave his friends a soft glare, a bit annoyed at their antics, and then began to walk the two noobs through what was to be expected of them in this dojo. A few more of the older students listened in on Miguel's pep talk, inputting things that Sensei Lawrence doesn't tolerate or finds extremely funny. Miguel was midway through another explanation before he heard the door to the dojo open. Weird. I could have sworn everyone was here. It was at that exact moment that Miguel simultaneously remembered and saw John Kreese walk through the door to the Cobra Kai dojo. A chill ran up his spine as he watched the older man survey the group of kids in front of him, his face showing indifference while his eyes showed disappointment. Miguel could have sworn Kreese held his gaze for a few seconds before continuing to walk around the dojo, stopping by a group of 3 new kids. Jesus Christ. The disgust was clearly on full display now. Kreese inspected the kids for no longer than 3 seconds before turning towards Johnny's office. The students were now all watching Kreese as Miguel stopped in front of him. Miguel didn't feel as confident as he looked, but as the leader, he stepped up to face the older man. "Can I help you, sir?" Miguel asked with more venom in his voice than he would have liked. Kreese raised his eyebrows slightly, a cruel satisfaction filling his eyes. He looked Miguel up and down, clearly impressed with what he saw. "Not at all, young man." Kreese paused, lifting a finger. "But maybe I can help you." Miguel opened his mouth to respond. "Hey." Both Miguel and Kreese turned to see Johnny coming out of his office. Kreese, finally seeing who he was here for, took this opportunity to step past Miguel, coming face to face with Johnny. "Kreese, you come with me. Mr. Diaz, get him warmed up." Miguel didn't miss the subtle nod Johnny sent him, which only served to slightly calm the boy down. Dealing with Kreese was always tense and never easy. "What the hell are you doing here?" "I called the deal off." Johnny started before the door was fully closed. He rounded on Kreese, who only wore a mask of indifference. The man looked around the room, picking at random items around the room before turning to face Johnny. "Indeed, you did, Mr. Lawrence. But you need me, almost as much as those soldiers out there need me. God knows those twigs in the back need as much help as they can get." Kreese stared out at the students, seeing how the younger kids in the back would make feeble attempts at forward strikes. "Kids," Johnny corrected, regaining Kreese's attention. "They're not soldiers, they're kids. They're here to learn how to defend themselves, and how to be badass. Nothing more, nothing less. We don't need your help, Kreese." Johnny stared down his old sensei, the older man looking only the slightest bit disappointed. "You've grown soft, Johnny. But," he straightened a pen on the desk, "that's something we can work on. Whether or not you need my help isn't up for debate, Mr. Lawrence. It's only a matter of when. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon. Remember, Cobra Brumate until the time is right. I've chosen now to be the right time to strike. When will you?" With that, Kreese walked out of the office, taking one last look at the group of Cobra in front of him, before making his departure. Johnny waited until the door to the dojo closed before emerging from his office. His students looked at him with worry as he made his way to the front. Miguel had just finished the warm-ups and stood back in line to allow his sensei to stand in the front. "All right. Now that that's over with, let's get to work." He scanned the rows as he usually did. "You're here to become badass. For now, you're a bunch of pansy bitches who don't know anything. A bunch of losers, who want to be something they're not. But, for those of you who aren't afraid to rumble with the real king of the jungle, you will become badass." And that's the end of the story for now. There are more chapters left in this series. If you would like us to keep releasing these stories, then please help get this video to 100 likes. Please share this video on Reddit, Instagram, Twitter, and other social media platforms to help other fans discover it. And we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.